Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of GeoPod. I'm your host, Dylan Woods. And obviously on this episode we're going to spend a lot of time discussing the election of Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States of America. What I wish to discuss within this video is the impact, the ramifications it will have on the United States foreign policy. So what we're going to do here is we're going to dissect the foreign policies that Trump is most likely to adhere to the moment he enters office early next year. And we will discuss some of the ramifications that may have within the geopolitical landscape, because there's a lot of assumptions, a lot of suggestions being made right now, if you take a look upon social media platforms, regarding the damage or effect that Donald Trump will have within the geopolitical landscape. However, all of that isn't necessarily set in stone, and that's kind of what I want to do with you all today, is kind of separate right from wrong, truth from falsehood, and kind of give you my theories, my analyses, if you will, my thoughts, what I believe is actually going to occur over the course of the next 4 years. So let's start with US defensive posture in general. So Donald Trump, even before in his previous presidency, in his previous administration, has been quite adamant to enhance the United States military machine even further. He's a huge advocate of expanding the efforts of the US military into space, something that I wholeheartedly agree with, given the fact that it will be a significant theater in future warfare. Simultaneously, concurrently, he seems also very keen on enhancing the United States missile defensive doctrine as well as its own missile capabilities. Another development that I wholeheartedly agree with. I believe that as of right now, yes, the United States missile defense doctrine is adequate, at least more adequate than that of its opposition. However, I still believe there's a lot of room for development. There's a lot of room for enhancements that need to be made, especially aimed to eventually counter other military powers such as Russia and such as China. So I like that Donald Trump sees that these are elements within the defensive doctrine, within the defensive engine of the United States, that need to be addressed further, need to be addressed deeper, need to be developed to a higher degree in order to better deal with not just the present threats, but also the future threats, which will be more and more based upon hypersonic glide vehicles, especially those applied to ballistic missiles. So I like all of that. I like also the fact that Donald Trump seems to be an advocate of cyber warfare, and particularly offensive cyber warfare capabilities. As of right now, the US has been, especially over the course of the last couple of years, has been quite reluctant in openly admitting to its offensive cyber warfare capabilities and thereby committing to them. However, Donald Trump seems to be eager to go into a different direction. He wishes to develop the United States offensive cyber capabilities, which are already enhanced in regards to those of its adversaries. But again, it's all about doctrine, right? And Donald Trump seems to understand that not just the conflicts that are currently taking place and are ongoing, but also those we might be faced with in the future states require one rapid, swift, offensive action in an early stage. So I agree with the doctrine overall. I think that Donald Trump will put a lot of emphasis on the United States military posture, not just as a means to secure its own interest, let's say, but also to pose a stronger deterrent to its many adversaries who seems to have been emboldened over the course of the last couple of years. That brings us to the question of the Middle East. Trump in his previous presidency has shown that he is ready, eager to take a firm stance against radical governments within the area, especially Iran. And he has said time and time again that he will support Israel to a higher degree that it has been supported by the Biden administration so far. He wishes to put more effort into bringing the hostages back home. Also the hostages originating from the US, which are still unaccounted for and which are, in my opinion, have been left to their fate more or less by the Biden administration. So he wishes to take a very firm stand against radical entities within the region, thereby enhancing Israel's posture and Israel's stance within the region. So he's probably going to look to obstruct Iran to the furthest extent possible. The proxy network is most certainly something that is going to be addressed not just by Israel but also by the United States, given their lingering assets and elements within Iraq and Syria. I believe, being a businessman, being someone with let's say an affinity to economy, let's say, I believe he will take a very harsh stance towards the Houthis, and will probably gear more efforts towards neutralizing them than the previous administration has done so far. At the same time, and this is perhaps the most significant part of Middle Eastern policy, is he will seek to further develop the Abraham Accords, which were absolutely revolutionary at the time that they occurred. And the Abraham Accords are absolutely essential for a sustainable peace and prosperity and stability within the Middle East. And one of the main future parties, in my opinion, that needs to be involved in the Abraham Accords is Saudi Arabia. If you succeed in bringing Saudi Arabia into the fold, in creating an agreement on paper, an accord between one of Islam's most primary nations and the Jewish state, that will stand as a huge precedent and can stand as a huge foundation from which to develop further and draw more of these Gulf states into these accords, thereby posing a larger and more firmer front against Iran, as well as a clear deterrent towards any of their proxies as well, who seek to obviously undermine this process. So compared to Kamala Harris, I do believe that for stability and peace within the Middle East, Trump is by far a better choice. Trump seems to have a much clearer picture of who the Ayatollahs actually are and the dangers that Iran poses, not just to regional stability, but to global stability as a whole, especially the stability within our own Western societies. As I've stated previously on this channel and explained to you guys just why that is. So that brings us to China. Well, both Harris and Trump pledged to take a firm stance against China. However, Trump seems to be willing to play it more on the economic side. Even in his previous presidency, it was a great ambition of Trump to decrease Western dependency on China in terms of logistic and industrialization and production. He wishes to make America as independent as possible when it comes to production. All of the things, or many of the things, and many of the products, many of the industry that is currently being done in China, he wishes to be done on U.S. soil. So he wishes to obstruct China economically that way, because he understands that the more we depend ourselves on China, the greater their economic leverage will become, the further that will get them to their eventual ambition of becoming the foremost world power. At the same time, he wishes to increase the security posture within the Pacific, creating increasingly strong partnerships with, let's say, countries such as Australia, with Japan, with Singapore, with the Philippines, and with South Korea. So, more or less, Harris's alleged policies and his alleged policies, they're not very different from each other. However, it appears he seems to have a deeper, he seems to be more clear about what he wants to do, especially on the economic side of the conflict. He understands that China's main leverage over the Western world is its production, is its economy, and is its let's say Western dependency on its factories and on its production chains. So he wishes to counter that, obviously, by giving China less economic leverage and thereby obstructing them in their agenda and their endgame. So I decided to discuss Russia for last, and NATO and Ukraine and everything that comes along with that for a different reason, and that is that the things I've seen so far in the wake of his election is that somehow many people, as of right now, believe that Putin is popping the champagne. He's celebrating, he's jubilant upon Trump's re-election. But I don't necessarily think it will turn out that way. I don't really believe Putin has much reason and much cause to celebrate. And I will tell you why. So, as of right now, Trump believes that he can end the Russia-Ukraine war within a day. So he's going to find out really quickly that that's not the case. The moment he gets confronted with that reality, either one or two things are going to occur. One, he's going to stand by his previous statements, withhold all financial and military aid to Ukraine, and pretty much pull his hands off the conflict, and encouraging European NATO member states to rise up and support Ukraine in as a part to the United States. So that's one outcome that reality may have. However, here's another one. Trump has been adamant about countering Iran, China, and North Korea. The moment he steps into office and gets a clear picture of the current developments going on and the main actors behind these developments, he has to come very swiftly to the realization that Russia, China, Iran, North Korea are pretty much branches from the same tree. So if he wishes to effectively counter Iran, to effectively counter China, to effectively counter North Korea, he has to effectively counter Russia. So I believe that he has a firm stance now, and I believe he will seek first and foremost to indeed get Zelensky and Putin around the table and hopefully come to some sort of agreement, at least for the short to midterm future. However, I'm quite skeptical that he will be able to succeed in this endeavor, given the fact that this war is lasting years now. Putin seems to be set in his ambition. Zelensky is adamant not to forfeit any Ukrainian territory to Russia. So I just don't simply see a way, as of right now, how he will be able to do this in the first months of his presidency, which means that he needs to adapt. And that, in my opinion, is something that I'm quite curious to see how he will handle, given the fact that, yes, through 2016 up until 2020, yes, he didn't start any wars. Yes, the geopolitical landscape was relatively quiet compared to what it is now. But that also means that Trump was more or less able to cruise through his presidency. Right now, there's wars going on, not just in Ukraine, but in the Middle East. The enemies of the United States are rising, they're emboldened, and they have shown that they're not afraid to act. So this time, he cannot simply maintain the same strategies as he did in 2016 up until 2020. He's going to need to adapt, and he will realize that very quickly the moment he assumes office. And that's something that I'm very curious to see unfold, is how will he adapt? Will he have the right people behind him who can convince him or push him in a certain direction that he needs to take, if he indeed wishes to check off all these objectives on his list? So he could also, given, let's say if we stick with that hypothetical chain of events, it means that he also starts to understand the value that NATO poses to him in this endeavor. Now, previously, many of the remarks he made, many of the comments he made about NATO are not necessarily wrong. Yes, for a very long time, the European NATO member states have, in my opinion, failed in their duty to uphold their 2% military spending. They have become complacent. They have looked too much to the United States to clean up their mess, or to act in their name or in their interest, let's say. And by the end of the day, Trump is right. It is an alliance, which means that it isn't just based upon US meddling. No, it's a partnership where every single member state needs to carry his weight. And he's absolutely right about that. Now, that doesn't mean that NATO serves no purpose. Quite to the contrary, NATO stands as the most significant and most effective military alliance this world has ever seen. And it needs to be maintained and developed further and expand if we wish to create a world where peace, stability, and prosperity can reign. So But again, he will pretty much arrive to similar conclusions once he understands that it is no longer 2016 and that the geopolitical landscape of 2024 and 2025 looks significantly different than what he is used to. However, that doesn't mean that he can't still be efficient. I believe Trump, being the businessman that he is, coming from the background that he does, will be able to adapt at least to a certain degree so that he at least can look after his own objectives and accomplish them to the furthest extent possible. So, a long story short, I do believe that over the course of the next 4 years, there will going to be a lot of changes within the geopolitical landscape. His influence will be known and will be visible all across the board. However, if he wishes to be efficient, he must understand the big picture. And he must understand that in order to achieve A, you need to look after B and C as well. And that is for me the greatest thing that I am currently wondering. Will he be able to see that? Will he be able to arrive at that conclusion and then go from there? Because if he's able to do that, he will prove to be an incredibly efficient president given the current turmoil and conflict within the current geopolitical landscape. So these are just some of my thoughts regarding what Trump's foreign policies will look like and some of their ramifications they will bring about. I do believe that Iran is going to have a serious problem with Trump at the helm. I do believe China is nervous, to say the least, because they understand that Trump, well, he's a very, let's say, prolific president. He doesn't rest on his laurels. He has very little concern for etiquette and very little concern for how shall we call it, political mannerisms, let's say. He cares about efficiency. He cares about results. And he's not afraid to exchange the silk glove for the iron gauntlet if need be. Now, Russia at first, like I said before, might think they are out of the woods. But again, once Trump begins to understand that in order to go after Iran, China, and North Korea, he needs to come after Russia as well, that sentiment might swiftly change. And they might have a serious problem on their hands once Trump understands that obstructing Russia means obstructing the rest of the axis of evil at the same time. These are all my thoughts. Thank you for listening to this clip. If you have any comments to me, if you have any questions for me, please feel free to leave them in the comment sections down below. You can also reach out to me to one of my social media platforms. I will look to get back to you as soon as possible. If there's something that I missed, if there's something that you have a question about, or that you would like me to discuss or elaborate, please feel free to suggest it to me, and I will see what I can do. Please leave a like beneath this video and subscribe to my channel. I look to disseminate more content to you in the near future. Once again, thank you very much and have a blessed day.